The writer says the problem is complicated further by the personalization algorithms underlying social media. These tend to feed us content consistent with our beliefs and clicking patterns, helping to strengthen the acceptance of misinformation. Someone who is skeptical about climate change might be given an increasing stream of content denying it is caused by humans, making them less likely to take personal action or vote to tackle the issue. It works today. These changes are unique, whereas uncertainty is inherent to the scientific process. But in the case of the scientific consensus on climate change, which sees up to 99% of climate scientists agreeing that humans are responsible, we have something as close to certainty as science comes. Scientists, the writer says, need to leverage this agreement to its maximum and communicate to the public using innovative and persuasive strategies. This includes creating social media content of their own to not only shift beliefs, but also influence behaviors. Otherwise, their voices, however highly trusted, will continue to be drowned out by the frequency and ferocity of content produced by those with no concrete evidence. For more information on the English program, please follow us by going to Spreaker.com/user/451611. In 2017, there were nearly 350,000 incidents of workers taking sick leave due to injuries affecting muscles, nerves, ligaments, or tendons, like carpal tunnel syndrome, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. Among the workers with the highest number of incidents, people who work in factories and warehouses. Musculoskeletal disorders happen at work when people use awkward postures or perform repeated tasks. These behaviors generate strain on the body over time, so it's important to point out and minimize risky behaviors to keep workers healthy on the job. Researchers at the University of Washington have used machine learning to develop a new system that can monitor factory and warehouse workers and tell them how risky their behaviors are in real time. The algorithm divides up a series of activities such as lifting a box off a high shelf, carrying it to a table and setting it down into individual actions, and then calculates a risk score associated with each action. The researchers say right now workers can do a self-assessment where they fill out their daily tasks on a table to estimate how risky their activities are. But that's time-consuming, and it's hard for people to see how it's directly benefiting them. Now we have made this whole process fully automated. Our plan is to put it in a smartphone app so the workers can even monitor themselves and get immediate feedback. Ashish Banerjee is an assistant professor in both the industrial and systems engineering and mechanical engineering departments at the university. For the self-assessments, people currently use a snapshot of a task being performed. The position of each joint gets a score, and the sum of all the scores determines how risky that pose is. But workers usually perform a series of motions for a specific task, and the researchers wanted their algorithm to be able to compute an overall score for the entire action. Moving to video is more accurate, but it requires a new way to add up the scores. To train and test the algorithm, the team created a data set containing 23-minute videos of people doing 17 activities that are common in warehouses or factories. One of the tasks we had people do was pick up a box from a rack and place it on a table, said one of these students. We wanted to capture different scenarios, so sometimes they would have to stretch their arm. Now that people are starting to work in settings where robots are used, we have a unique opportunity to split up the work so that the robots are doing the risky jobs, says one of the researchers. Robots and humans could have an active collaboration where a robot can say, "I see that you are picking up these heavy objects from the top shelf, and I think you may be doing that a lot of times. Let me help you." If you were losing sleep over the number of likes on your Instagram account, you might want to think twice before posting that selfie. That's the main takeaway from a new study in the Journal of Research in Personality by Washington State University psychologists. The scientists conducted a novel experiment with hundreds of actual Instagram users to determine if there are certain types of self-image posts that cause others to make snap judgments about the user's personality. The work shows that individuals who post a lot of selfies are almost uniformly viewed as less likable, less successful, more insecure, and less open to new experiences than individuals who share a great number of posed photos taken by someone else. Basically, selfie versus posed. Mississippi analyzed data from two groups of students for the study. The first group consisted of 30 undergraduates from a public university in the southern US. The participants were asked to complete a personality questionnaire and agreed to let the researchers use their 30 most recent Instagram posts for the experiment. The posts were coded based on whether they were selfies or posies, as well as what was depicted in each image, such as physical appearance, affiliation with others, events, activities, or accomplishments. The second group of students consisted of 119 undergraduates from a university in the northwestern US. This group was asked to rate the Instagram profiles of the first group on 13 attributes such as self-absorption, low self-esteem, extroversion, and success, using only the images from those profiles. Barry's team then analyzed the data to determine if there were visual cues in the first group of students' photos that elicited consistent personality ratings from the second group. They found that the students who posted more posies were viewed as being relatively higher in self-esteem, more adventurous, less lonely, more outgoing, more dependable, more successful, and having the potential for being a good friend, while the reverse was true for students with a greater number of selfies on their feed. Personality ratings for selfies with a physical appearance theme, such as flexing in the mirror, were particularly negative, the researchers found. Other interesting findings from the study included that students in the first group who were rated by the second group as highly self-absorbed tended to have more Instagram followers and followed more users. The researchers also found the older the study participants in the second group were, the more they tended to rate profiles negatively in terms of success, consideration of others, openness to trying new things, and likability. One of the noteworthy things about this study is that none of these students knew each other or were aware of the Instagram patterns or number of followers of the people they were viewing, Barry says. The researchers have several theories to explain their results. The generally positive reactions to posies may be due to the fact that the photos appear more natural, similar to how the observer would see the poster in real life. Another explanation is that selfies were far less frequently posted than posies, and seeing one could signal something strange or unusual about the poster. While there may be a variety of motives behind why people post self-images to Instagram, how those photos are perceived appears to follow a more consistent pattern, Barry says. While the findings of this study are just a small piece of the puzzle, they may be important to keep in mind before you make that next post. This is the English program. This is the English program. If you're looking for a short-term fix from the very thing which is causing you long-term problems, then it's a symptom that you've got an addiction. So, Moni Deepa Taraftar from Lancaster University, Christian Meyer from the University of Bamberg, and Sven Lormer of Friedrich Alexander University Erlangen-Nürnberg, the FAU, they've written a joint article, Technostress, how social media keeps us coming back for more even when it makes us unhappy. And this is what they say. If you ever find yourself looking for technostress, sometimes, as we might have expected, they diverted or distracted themselves with unrelated activities such as hobbies. But counterintuitively, we found it was more common, the writers say, for people to distract themselves by using social media even more. They say social media apps and websites are what we call feature-rich technologies, meaning there are lots of ways to use them. On Facebook, you can play games, read the news, plan a holiday by looking at travel-related posts, or chat with your friends. Each of these actions is done in a different context and takes you into a different realm within the app. This allows you to view a single app in different ways. So if, for example, you experience social media techno-stress from a friend's post about cruelty to animals or from losing a game, you can get away from that stress by diverting your attention to something more pleasant and relaxing within the app. Such diversions sound harmless at first, but they suck you into a never-ending loop of social media techno-stress and social media diversion that keeps you stuck on the source of your stress. This can even form a symptom of addiction, where you constantly look for a short-term fix from the very thing that is causing you long-term problems. Alarmingly, the writers say, we found that the more you use the social media, the more likely you are to do this. They say concern over the potential negative effects of social media have led governments to start acting to protect citizens. US lawmakers have proposed banning features of social media that may have addictive properties, such as infinite content feeds and autoplaying of videos. In the next episode, behavior shapes harmful effects. Here's a question for you. Is there a link between fitness trackers and eating disorders? This is a question posed by the academic Carolyn Plateau, lecturer in psychology at Loughborough University, and today, August 22nd, she published this article. She says fitness and health tracking devices are becoming increasingly popular, and a huge variety of wearable tech and apps now exist. Indeed, many smartphones and smartwatches now come primed and ready to track our activity, sleep and nutrition. Research are claiming the app of eating and exercise behaviors could cause an eating disorder. But monitoring activity and food intake could inadvertently validate disordered eating has gone cycle phenomenon. Lecture mothers and fathers to give more space to their children. Intensive parenting was previously advocated as the solution to the problems and associated fears facing children, but it has recently been portrayed as a threat to the healthy development of young children. In recent times, over-parenting or helicopter parenting has become the new target of blame. A study published in Development Psychology concluded that children with helicopter parents may be less able to deal with the challenging demands of growing up, especially with navigating the complex school environment. Some go as far as to associate the mental health crisis afflicting colleges and universities on a generation of parents riddled with fear. Shaming parents for the way they are bringing up their children is nothing new. Parent shaming and blaming has long been a recurring theme in expert narratives on child rearing. In the 19th century, parents were frequently accused of lacking the moral and intellectual resources necessary to bring up children. They were also frequently castigated for setting a bad example for their children. Parental incompetence was perceived as particularly debilitating in relation to the management of children's anxieties and fears. From the late 19th century onwards, experts asserted that parents needed to shield their children from exposure to fear. They claimed that abolishing fear from childhood was essential for the well-being of young people. Psychologists and parenting experts argued the children could suffer serious damage if they were not insulated from fear. The pioneering psychologist Granville Stanley Hall pointed the finger of blame at incompetent or irresponsible parents who failed to protect their offspring from the perilous consequences of experiencing fear. He also believed that the fears of children were generally caused by parents. His arguments were widely cited during the early decades of the 20th century. During the interwar era, numerous commentators portrayed parental behavior and practices as a risk to their children's mental health. One version of this narrative suggested that children could catch fear through internalizing the anxieties of their parents. Fear states are contagious, claimed John Anderson, the author of Happy Childhood, in 1933. Anderson added that the first step in the control and elimination of fear is the maintenance by parents of a courageous attitude in the presence of their children. New parenting advice stressed the importance of protecting children from situations that might frighten them. A discussion on nerves in the nursery warned that even children are now suffering from nerves. It advised that nervousness can be cured, but never by ridicule, anger, or sternness, and added that parents should ensure never to suggest fear in children. The writer says, "As I note in my study how fear works, scare stories about the danger of parents failing to prevent children from exposure to experiences that might frighten them often concluded with the warning that they risked inflicting lifelong emotional scars on their offspring." Since the 1950s, and especially since the 1970s, the imperative of shielding children from being exposed to fear mutated into an expansive sense of anxiety about virtually every dimension of childhood. And anxieties about the supposed precarious state of childhood acquired a momentum of their own in the night. This theme from yesterday's world. The idea that children have to have a string of A grades is a terrible thing, Dweck told the newspaper, putting the blame for all these A grades on parental influence. In the past few generations, we have seen the emergence of highly educated mothers. They schedule all these activities and advocate for the child. Dweck is alluding to the phenomenon of intensive mothering, where the rearing of children has come to be seen as highly skilled, expensive, and challenging pursuit that demands the parents, and particularly mothers, put increasing amounts of time and intellectual energies into ensuring their children's optimal development. Indeed, the argument that the malaise of today's youth is down to a generation of parents who are too ambitious and overprotective to allow their children to grow up is becoming an increasingly common one. There is even a label, the helicopter parent, which hails from the US, but like many such cultural tropes, the writer says, has been gleefully adopted over here. The helicopter parent is allegedly a product of the baby boomer generation of parents who, indulged and self-indulgent themselves, are now importing their spoiled individualism into their own little mini-me's. This writer does not pull her punches, does she? She says, "It is hardly surprising that the baby boomers are coming under fire for their alleged parenting styles." She says, "My research into the media and policy discussion about the boomer generation indicates that in recent," I just made a funny noise, didn't mean to, "in recent years it has found itself blamed for a bewildering range of social problems, from the global financial crisis to the disintegration of the welfare state. Given the parents in general seem to be blamed," she says, "but can this all be the fault of pushy, highly educated helicopter parents? The deeper problem is the double bind of parenting culture in which parents are exhorted to protect their children from an expanding range of physical harms, emotional challenges, and perceived slights. When parents are continually told their paramount concern should be the safety and success of their children, no wonder kids are scared to venture out alone, and parents end up doing their homework for them. The helicopter parent trope presents the parent trying her hardest to meet the impossible demands of child-centered parenting, often involving a significant financial, emotional, and time cost. As a selfish tiger mother who is setting her child on the path to anxiety and self-harm. Meanwhile, parents who lack the economic kind, but so great, and then some others in the UK will increase by 2.8% in January 2020, after rising 3.1% in January 2019, following a year of timetable changes and cancellations. Who do the train companies think they're fooling? One thing is clear. The fact that they have paid out £1 billion to shareholders over the past 6 years demonstrates that the companies are efficiently delivering financial returns to private investors while delivering an inefficient service for the people who really matter, their customers. Where work is considered to be a public service, it's interesting to consider the efficiency demands of the government versus the efficiency demands of a private company. After all, the decision to outsource public services relies on the idea that the market can be more efficient than government. While companies performing government-outsourced services understand that their private interest in achieving market objectives is their key selling point, they must also understand that those same objectives must also align with the public interest. Indeed, train company customers are the public, and those customers can see that efficiency costs have paid off well for private investors. Cost efficiencies, such as attempts to cut the number of train guards, raising fares and making it difficult to make a reimbursement claim, no doubt positively cancelled for the umpteenth time. Pictures of crowded platforms on social media begin to appear with captions like, "Why can't the trains just run on time?" or "How do the trains run on time in Spain and not here?" What these posts communicate is a simple frustration that a public service intended to efficiently get people to work on time and deliver them home at a reasonable hour can no longer be taken for granted. The writer says, "I'm reminded of a story I read about a commuter who reported that she was stuck in a never-ending cycle of despair, including anxiety, which eventually became a part of her everyday commute." The consumer advocacy magazine Which reported similar frustrations, including being disciplined at work and parents unable to get home for bedtimes. Unsurprisingly, neglecting the needs of commuters led the Office of Rail and Road to state that there is a lack of responsibility and accountability for train operators. Such experiences contributed to Which magazine's review of the train services, which ranked Northern, Southern, Thameslink and Southeastern at the bottom of their commuter rating table. All were rated poorly for punctuality, reliability, and value for money in particular. Much of the ill will towards train companies has accumulated over time, but one event that is still prominent in the minds of customers is the Go Via Thameslink Railways, the GTR timetable change fiasco. Months of cancellations and delays resulted in a government-commissioned review of the rail industry. A government order that GTR invest £15 million in improvements for passengers and a £5 million fine. GTR has nevertheless retained its control over the railways it operates, with commuters paying more to use its trains. Some have argued that the consequences for rail providers have been marginal, with the Shadow Transport Secretary Andy McDonald